Hi, Hirsch Saha here, and this is talk video number 3 about East versus West, and just recording from here at my place in Auckland, New Zealand, and the date is, well, still Sunday, the 28th of July, 2019. So this is a pretty interesting video. When I consider sort of the different countries I've been to, obviously I've been all around my own country, my home country, which is New Zealand, been to Australia, all around it, been to Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, whether or not that counts as China, but at least I've been there. Been all around India, which is my country of origin. Been to a few countries in Africa, which are Ethiopia, Malawi, Zambia, and South Africa. Also been to North America, the US and Canada when I was very young, and also Hawaii. And in the South Pacific, I've been to New Caledonia, Fiji, and Tonga on a cruise a few years ago. But really, this video is about East versus West, and for so many years, I thought, which was really the better one, if you like, which was just better overall. And I came to the conclusion after many years of thinking is that, well, East and West, I mean, both have huge strengths and weaknesses. I don't think you can really compare things. Really, both have their ups and downs, and any country on earth, despite what people might first think when they hear the name of it, really will have its own ups and downs, its own strengths and weaknesses. And where we can benefit each other is obviously looking at each other's strengths rather than weaknesses, and seeing how we can create a synergy from that. Some people will say with the East coming up, especially countries like India and China, well, they've got huge populations and they've got a growing middle class, and yes, they are coming up and they're developing very quickly. But what is that going to do in terms of carbon emissions and, of course, climate change? Well, I wouldn't say that we should disallow them to grow, to develop. I mean, I do honestly believe that we can have it both ways. One problem with the Western world trying to implement, newer, cleaner technologies is that they're so used to what they already have, and the existing older technologies are so integrated in their everyday systems and lives that it's hard to switch over. But at least with the East developing, countries in Asia and Africa developing, and even South America, at least I would think it's much easier to implement newer, cleaner technologies, so they can really have the best of both worlds. They can have growth as well as be, lower their carbon emissions and be greener for the good of the planet. Some people will also say East versus West. I know people will even go as far as to point the finger at, say, the United States and say, you've got about 5% of the world's population. I know it's approximately 330 million. So say about 5% of the world's population there, consuming about 30% of the resources, and also emitting a good, 25 to 30% of carbon emissions. Well, when I hear that, I honestly think that, well, at the same time, America, yes, it might have those statistics with it, but it's benefited the rest of the world in so many ways. You look at what they have developed, be it Hollywood, be it IT, be it space travel and satellite technology, and therefore the information age as we know it. Just so many things they've developed, and the rest of the world has benefited of that. Some people might still say, oh, but you look at their history and it's a country that's been built on slavery, things like that, or you even look back at their origins going back to the British Empire. And honestly, to that, I would say, well, I think any country that was ever in a position to to control so much, to take over so much, if you like, to rule the world, they would take it. You can point to one country or you can point to one race and say, like, for example, the British Empire, and people say, you look at the colonialism and all the slavery and all the damage it did, and yes, that is true. But at the same time, you look at those days and how different those times were, and the different ways people thought about, and times when things like slavery was just considered normal. It was considered, it was legal, and it was just the way things were done. They had nothing against it, and obviously people, their perceptions and even their overall maturity, if you know what I mean, changes over time. But when you look at it, pretty much any country in that position would have done the same thing, really. And you look at so many countries over the years that have had at least the chance to be at the top or take over the world, and they've taken it, whether it was Russia, America, Nazi Germany, going all the way back. So I think that's really just, even human nature and just the way you would expect a country to act in its unique position. But overall, I think, all countries really do have their ups and downs, even going back to just the generalization of the East and West. I mean, the East has a lot of spiritualism, they're very traditional, they're very in touch with their roots and origins, whereas the West, of course, has the technology, has developed systems, have highly codified laws, have very established practices when it comes to human rights. And again, I just see advantages in both, and obviously that's where both should be looking at to benefit of each other by looking at each other's advantages and focusing on that as opposed to disadvantages. And when I tried to think of what was really the best country or whether the East, and looking at the East and West and seeing which one was better, well, that's what I learned. Both have huge strengths and weaknesses. If you look hard enough, you can see ways where both can benefit off each other immensely, to create a synergy between the two. And that's what we should really be focusing on. That is what I think. Thank you.